to look at three statements of the rabbis, Mamarei Chazal. One we looked at in part one, in a little bit more depth. We're going to look at two others and develop an idea of Kabbalat HaTorah, which I think presents an interesting perspective. The first place we start off with is the concept that God raised the mountain over the Jewish people and basically said, if you accept the Torah, it's good. If not, this will be your end. And the point is, the Gemara says, well, what kind of acceptance is that? In a contractual relationship formed through duress, in other words, you put a gun to someone and say, sign the paper or else, has no standing as a contract. So if God wants a contractual relationship, what's the point of putting the mountain over their head? And the way that we saw Rishonim ask the question, the Ramban, the Ritva, others basically says okay, and the Gemara says basically the contract is null and void, and then the Gemara answers that at the time of Achashverosh there was a new acceptance. But the Gemara asks the question, the Rishonim asks the question in between, but what about the time period from Sinai to the days of Purim? How could the repercussions of Torah be applied? In other words, how could the Jews have been kicked out of Eretz Yisrael for their sins because they wouldn't be held accountable for their sins because they did not have a contractual relationship? So some Rishonim, I think Ramban answers, and other answers is that basically the contract was still for you if you follow the Torah, you get the land. If you don't follow the Torah, you don't get the land. So even if you didn't accept the Torah, there was still a contractual relationship in terms of being in the land or not. So the point is if you did not follow the Torah, you still got kicked out of the land. Okay. So now I just want to extend that, and then we saw other concepts and so forth, of a little bit of the sort of like background of what's going on from that Gemara in Shabbat. God gives orders in this world, gives commands in this world. If God says jump, no one asks what authority you have to tell us to jump. Right? It seems to be that there's a concept of God as a legitimate authority figure. That is referred to as Melech HaMetzuva al Ha'am, as a king who commands his nation. And political authority is an acceptable form of authority. The Ramban says, basically, if God was giving the Torah under that sort of hat, if that was the concept of Torah that God can command, he said this Gemara's question would not be a challenge. He said it would not be a problem. He says if it was Xeris HaMelech, the king's edict that said do Torah, that would be the political obligation, and we would be bound by it. What is being introduced here is a new form of a relationship with God, contractual relationship. So therefore we already have a concept of God being able to command as a king. Okay. Now, the question now exists in terms of this contractual relationship. Contractual relationships are usually done through acceptance of both parties. Forcing the party to accept the contractual relationship is a problem. So the question exists, why would God do it? And if you're working under a contractual relationship, how could God punish? He could punish under his definition as king, but if you're arguing contractual relationship, how could he punish? Now the fact is, this Gemara in Shabbat presents another story there, besides the raising of a mountain. Gemara in Shabbat raises the question that it says that on the day the Torah was given, the language is that the earth shuddered and was quiet. Right? It says over there, the translation I have is the earth feared and was tranquil. Okay? So if you're afraid and you're shuddering, why were you tranquil? So the Gemara answers, the world was concerned that the whole reason the world was created was for Torah. So if the Jews did not accept the Torah, the world would have been returned to tohu vavohu, to nothingness. It says because the world accepted Torah, the world was content. Okay, because the Jews accepted the Torah, now the world can continue. So that would seem to be another definition of a relationship with God. That relationship with God is He created the world for the Torah to be observed by human beings. Okay, if the Torah is not going to be observed by human beings, then He will basically destroy the world. That's not a punishment. That is a quid pro quo type of relationship. I did this for this reason. It's not going to happen, so I'm just taking away what I did. Okay? Now that is a way some Rishonim also understand what God did with the mountain. He basically said, I want you to accept the Torah in order to exist. If you don't want it, and they say this out from Sham Tietz Purashchem, then I'll destroy the world. Not as a punishment, but as a consequence. Okay? I did this for this reason. If it's not going to happen, then this world can be destroyed. Now that question also emerges, like for example, with the Mabul, with the flood. Okay, if you look in the flood, it basically says God created the world for a certain reason. The world should be a certain type of place. The world wasn't that type of place. Therefore, I'm just getting rid of it. There's a problem though, because the Mabul seem to have some type of pain for the people. So the question exists is why there's some type of pain for that. Listen, if I give you a place in order to live a certain type of life, you don't live that type of life, I can take back that place. That was the condition. Okay? I'm not punishing you, I'm just saying that's the deal. So there's some people who try to understand that that's what God was doing over here. That basically God was saying, I want you to follow the Torah, and I'll give you Israel. If you don't follow it, I'm not going to give you Israel. Okay, and that's not an aspect of you accepting it or not. That's the deal. So what we have here is we have the authoritative value. God is ordered, and then we have the idea of simple contractual de facto relationship. This is for that, but the point is, the Gemara seems to say there has to be an acceptance. We want this relationship, not the fact that this is just a relationship. We want this relationship. Okay, Beth, you wanted to.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
No, I like interruptions.
Okay, I was just thinking. It's contractual from whose point of view? So you have all these Jews that had a life, even though it was in slavery, they still had a life and were, I'm assuming, enjoying the world on some level. So then, from Hashem's perspective, it could have been a consequence. You accept it or it's over. But from the human point of view, they didn't come into the world with that knowledge.
Right. The fact is that's where you get into the issue.
Yeah.
That's where you get into the issue of acceptance. In other words, the first model basically says God is the authority figure, them's the rules.
That's the king.
Right. The second model basically says, here's reality. Okay? Reality is you have to do this in order to do that. Okay? If you want to have a healthy life, you got to exercise. You don't exercise, it may not be healthy. That's a consequence. You didn't choose it, but that's a consequence. The point is the second viewpoint over here in answering up why it was possible for God to kick the Jewish people out of the land of Israel, even though they didn't accept the contract, was because there was a de facto reality. The de facto reality is the only reason I'm letting you have the land is if you follow Torah. If you're not going to follow Torah, you don't get the land. Not as punishment, but as the de facto reality of that relationship.
But what in their view was the alternative?
They could be, that's going to be a very powerful point. The fact is that there's the authority model, and then there's the reality model. The reality model says this is the way the world is created. You don't like it? Too bad. That's the way the world is.
So there really is no choice freedom of choice.
On this level.
Right.
So the question exists is that on this, well, there is a freedom of choice. You have freedom of choice of saying, okay, I'm not going to follow the law and I'll go to jail. You know, like there's a movie that says if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Well, that's it. The fact of the matter is that's where you get into some interesting questions of what real freedom of choice is you don't really understand freedom of choice until you understand that the evildoer does it knowing full well that he's going to get his blank kicked in by God. In other words, when you look at the nation of Amalek, when you look at the Rishayim of history, a lot of people make the mistake of free choice is, well, punishment makes no free choice is, I know that, and this is why it's so significant in terms of understanding Jewish law in terms of what we call hasra, in terms of warning. You actually give a warning and say, listen, if you eat that piece of pork, you're in violation of the law, and you're going to get lashes. And the person doing it has to say, Afal Pikain, I know that's the consequence, I still want to do it. Which means that free choice is, my free choice is to do this action and accept the consequence, with the consequences. So when you look at the powerful Rishayim, the evildoers of history, it's not free choice because they didn't know there would be consequences and so forth. It's free choice knowing full well that they would be punished by God in that extent. And that leads to a tremendous question. Why does an evildoer say, I'm going to defy God even though I'm going to get my whatever kicked in, and that becomes a real understanding what free choice is about.
So was there really free choice under the mountain?
No, that's the point. Under the mountain, that's the point. There wasn't a free choice decision because basically what the mountain represents is the political authority model. This is the reality. God's in charge. He says jump. That's it. You don't want to jump, you go to jail. That's it. The second one is, this is reality. And this reality is like medical reality. Take your cod liver oil and you'll be healthy. It tastes terrible? Too bad. The fact is that's a reality. You don't have a choice about that. That becomes the issue over here. And that becomes the issue over here where what is the choice? So what's being presented is, there was a deal. It was the authority figure. God said, this is the law. Okay, under that mandate, God is king. We had to follow the Torah. The second one is us accepting Him as in terms of reality. If we want the land of Israel, we got to do the Torah. We didn't keep the Torah, we got kicked out of the land. That's a consequence. Okay, that's just simply a consequence.
So there was a free choice. You had the choice to not accept Torah and not get the land.
No, at that point in time,
at that point in time,
right.
Conditions of reality say that
right.
The world was made for that purpose.
Right.
Therefore, the world would stop to exist.
Right,
okay.
and that was what the Gemara in Shabbat. The second story in the Gemara in Shabbat says this is reality. The world was created for Torah. If you don't accept the Torah, this is going to be it. But the other situation here is that wasn't a free choice decision, because the fact of the matter is their acceptance of yes was done under duress. Therefore, it's not considered to be an acceptance. So the question is, but they still kept the Torah. They still followed the Torah. And there was still a punishment of being kept in the land. So the point is, even though they didn't say yes to the agreement of the Torah, okay, it wasn't done out of a free choice acceptance, the contract was still de facto applied. God kept the contract going, took him into the land and so forth and so forth, and they sort of knew that, hey, the way we keep the land is by doing Torah. When they stopped doing Torah, they get kicked out of the land. But it wasn't because of it wasn't because of them accepting the contract. It was because of a de facto contractual relationship that existed. Right?
One little nuance that still bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a concept of an Erev Rav.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Any of the Erev Rav could have been upstart and said, no, I don't want this. I'm gonna, as it were, commit suicide. Kill me.
The relationship of the Erev Rav is not something I've ever really totally investigated, but I know it's difficult to understand the Erev Rav. because the Erev Rav's position in terms of Klal Yisrael is somewhat problematic to define. They were at Sinai. It seems that they were in the definition of Gerim. Okay? So the point is they were full members of the Jewish people. On the other hand, they did not get a Yerusha in Eretz Yisrael. They weren't part of the from what I understand, they weren't part of the people who actually got land.
Wait a minute.
They weren't part of the
Okay, so
a great multitude left together with the people of Israel from Egypt,
Right.
who were not Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There were
Right.
Mitzrayim that accepted or went along with or recognized what was going on. I got to get out of here.
Or also possibly other slaves who basically said, "Hey, can we go along with you and leave?"
Good.
The point is that there is contention, for example, that the Egel Hazahav, the golden calf, was motivated, was basically came from the Erev Rav, was the major motivators for that. But the fact is, as I said, the Erev Rav has a difficult status. It's mentioned much more in the beginning of the Sinai experience. It's not mentioned as much towards the latter part of the Sinai experience. But the fact is that there seems to be a population of individuals who left Egypt, were not really part of Israel proper on one hand, but were part of Israel proper as Gerim, and we consider Gerim to be full of Jews.
But yet they didn't inherit, and therefore...
Because Gerim don't inherit.
Well, okay, fine,
yeah,
but then having the land is of no consequence.
Right, but the fact is that it's hard to clearly define them as outside of Klal Yisrael. Okay. On the other hand, it's hard to see them as totally equal members of Klal Yisrael, and that's why I've always had a difficulty in defining what they were. They seem to be a population that caught because, and you get into this issue. The problem also gets into the issue of anything to do with Gerim. Whenever you have any issue with converts. There is concern that converts will lessen the purity of the Jewish people. And I don't like using that term, but there's always that concern. There's like the Gemara says in Pesachim, I believe, Kashim Gerim to Yisrael Kasapachas, that Gerim converts are difficult to the Jewish people like leprosy. So that's considered to be a really that's a powerful statement. On the other hand, we look upon converts very, very positively. Shema and Eltayin were converts. Rabbi Akiva comes from converts. It was something interesting in last week's parsha from the Torah Tamima. Torah Tamima points out that David HaMelech, he points out that David HaMelech came from converts, and God especially likes converts. So the point is that we have this viewpoint where converts are looked upon very positively, and a viewpoint that sort of says you have to be careful about converts because of their of the negative possibilities. But the fact is that it's a challenge. The Erev Rav, I believe I saw someone actually refer. I'm trying to remember where I saw this, but I think, for example, the Erev Rav was used an example of that statement of Kashim Gerim Kisrael Kusapachas. That Gerim are difficult to Jewish people, like leprosy, like skin sores or whatever. And the point is that it's a real challenge. The Erev Rav are held accountable for the sin of the golden calf. On the other hand, they started it, but Klal Yisrael as a unit basically was held responsible. And we're not exactly sure of the numbers that actually joined in. It doesn't seem to be that big numbers, but for some reason Klal Yisrael was all held accountable. But what you do have is you have this situation where you're dealing with authority. There's an authority figure, and then there's reality. And reality is you didn't choose this reality, but that's the reality. And what's happening here is that God is really saying, choose in the contract. I'd like you to choose this reality, what you're doing with the contract, but I'm forcing you to choose this reality, which is somewhat strange. And then there's the perception that you can, but the fact is, okay, so you didn't choose the reality, so I can't, it's not a pure contract relationship, but it is clearly a de facto contract. This is the reality. You don't follow Torah, you don't get the land. And the other statement of the Gemara is, you don't follow Torah, God will revert the land, revert the world back to Tohu Vavohu. Now, there's another interesting statement from the Pnei Yeshua, which I did not introduce last time, but I think it's something where I want to just point out. In the Pnei Yeshua, it's found in item 11. Pnei Yeshua was a major later commentary, I believe the 1600s. I think the 1600s. Okay, major commentary on the Talmud. And basically what Pnei Yeshua basically says is what exactly was this connection. So what he basically says is that, I'll look a little bit in terms of the theme, he says, we already saw that the world will be created to nothingness, right? So the point is, that's the fact. This is reality. If you accept the Torah, good. If not, I'll make the Torah into nothing. So what do you need the contract for? What's this idea of needing a contract? Okay? It's reality. There's political reality of God's authority. There's reality you need this in order to, this is the deal for the land. There's reality that this is why the world was created, otherwise the world would be created for nothing. So he says something very good, okay? He says, Eladafilu Hachi. So what exactly is this contractual relationship? Kevin Shelo Kiblu HaTorah L'Schar Ba'onesh B'Leiv Shalom. Since they did not accept the Torah for reward and punishment with a full heart, okay, that was the case. And what does that mean? That's the concept of, and he goes on, they had a way out of being punished in heaven and hell. Okay, L'olam haba, in the future world. In other words, listen, God, you created the world. You had rules for creating the world. This is reality, right? So if I don't want to follow that reality, destroy the world. Okay, fine. Kick me out of Israel. But I should get punished in the future world? I never accepted that. In other words, if you look at all the arguments for why God created the world, He created the world in order for Jews to be able, for people to be able to earn the future world. So the point is it says to earn the future world. Great, but what happens if you don't earn it? So you should sit there and say, listen, God, right, I messed up, I didn't earn the future world, so I didn't want the deal. So I didn't want the deal. So at least, I shouldn't get hell, just get rid of me. The aspect of being punished in hell, where does that come from? In other words, I didn't accept the deal, so at least, okay, so just take away the deal. But I never accepted that there will be a punishment. And he says that's what the point of the contract was.
Where did the Pnei Yeshua live?
In Europe, somewhere in Europe. Yeah.
I can understand the concept of an individual accepting Torah or, let's say, a philosophy to live or a group of individuals. When we talk about a nation, you talk about all the individuals in the nation, because it's hard to believe. Let's say you have 500,000 people, and
that's a very interesting question.
99% of them keep it. Let's say 95% keep it, 4% or so.
Well, it's like your Sodom and Gomorrah. Can you find one person?
The fact is that it raises a very interesting question which you're raising, in the sense that the relationship, and I'm not getting into this tonight, but the relationship between God and the Jewish people is a fascinating relationship, because we usually think in terms of a personal relationship with God, right? The religion really serves the person, okay? And yes, the person gets together in a group, but it's all individuals having a personal relationship with God, and then they join together in some group setting. The fact is you're absolutely right. There was a communal acceptance. And your question, how did that communal acceptance work? Was it a democratic idea, and you were stuck behind a democratic idea? Or was there some kind of unanimity within the people? And the fact is that it raises a fundamental issue in terms of our relationship with God. Our relationship with God is not really personal, it's national. And that raises a lot of issues. The first is that in that contractual relationship, how is a national relationship formed? And I don't necessarily have an answer to that. But the point is our relationship with God is national. It's not personal. And that yields a very different relationship. And that affects us as a nation in the sense that we are a collective. Now, the way a lot of people try to explain this is that really all of Israel is one organic unit. And we're all parts of that organic unit. So that's one way of explaining it. But the point is that we're all parts of that organic unit, which has an independent will along the way. All our organic parts have independent wills. And it's somewhat of a challenge of how we come together as a collective. It seems to be that when you look at Kabbalat HaTorah, it seems to be when we talk about the people saying it, b'vas echad, nasa v'nishma, kulum ke'echad, it's not just the idea that there was an idea that every voice said the same thing. It seems to be that there was some type of mystical collective union of the Jewish people in Kabbalat HaTorah that made it a national acceptance. And how that worked, it's, you know, in many ways when we talk about Revelation, we talk about these issues, we can investigate it, think about it and so forth, but we can't really understand it because you're dealing with a reality that is beyond our senses. What happened at Revelation at Sinai, I have no idea. When you talk about Moshe Rabbeinu going up there, and somehow everyone there knew that Moshe got the revelation from God, okay, I have no idea. And by the way, just to the aside, I find that concept to be extremely important in our modern world in terms of understanding the concept of faith. I spoke this morning, Shira did this morning, about the concept of distinction between revelation and reason, faith and reason, and the fact that there's a debate going on in the secular world. What's worse, religion or atheism? You know, the atheists like to point out, they like to give an argument that Adolf Hitler, Maximo, was really a closet Catholic. See, that belief in religion is really the worst type of evil. Okay, because religion lacks any reason, any parameter of reason or ethical reason to keep you in line. And religious people saying no, the worst possibility of evil is from atheism. They like to describe Hitler then as an atheist, and they for sure like to talk about Stalin in that regard. You know, what's worse, atheism or religion? So nowadays you see religion, Osama bin Laden, you see how bad it can be with religion, and that gives strength to the more secular forces in the world, and and then you have the other side in terms of the battle the other way. And the problem is that faith, my personal view of the model of Jewish morality is that, to me, the Torah gave us two yardsticks for the determination of ethics. One is Torah Misinai, revelation, and one is reason, which is the inner sense of morality from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. Okay, now, revelation takes precedence, okay, but the fact is that we are supposed to apply natural morality. Kodesh Baruch Hu really gave us two yardsticks for determining right and wrong, and it's the dialectic that sometimes is necessary. We use reason to understand halacha, and we need revelation to make sure the reason doesn't go off the deep end. But I pointed out today that one of the important things of understanding this is our understanding of revelation. So you look at what's a classic case of the challenge of reason and revelation? The classic story of the classic conflict of Hikeda. It's a classic understanding of the conflict between natural morality and revelational morality. It's a classical case. Okay? And the point is that if you look at the midrashic literature on it, you really see it very much. So there's actually a midrashim that say that Sarah Imenu was very upset with Abraham for not asking questions before the Akedah. The midrashim say, I don't get it. For those blankety blanks in the storm, he said, I show you Kohar Zoyasa Mishpat, and all of a sudden, for you killed your own son, yes, God. I mean, it's a classic question. And then after the whole event, of course, Avram basically asks God the reason questions and says, hey, and God gives him the answers. I never told you to go kill him. I told you just to put him on the Mizbeach and so forth and so forth. In fact, there's one Hasidic Rebbe, I forget who basically said that after the Akedah, because Avram didn't ask any questions, Kodesh Baruch Hu never revealed himself to him again, as a punishment to Avram. Okay, so the fact is, those are minor opinions. I mean, the Akedah has to be taken very good. But one of the big mistakes that we have in understanding this, and this is the mistake of Kierkegaard and blind faith and so forth, is this wasn't faith versus reason. This wasn't our faith versus reason. This was Avraham Avinu being told by God in the same manner that he was told about Sodom, and saw what happened to Sodom, okay, and had angels walking around in his camp, and had previous events with God, and saw the effect of those events. In other words, there was no question of faith, blind faith, and so forth and so forth. This was a fact. The same God who told him, I'm going to go destroy Sodom, and destroyed Sodom, and did exactly what he did, that same event happened and said, go take your son and sacrifice him. So you have to understand that you're talking about a totally different relationship. So when we talk about revelation and reason, and use the Akedah as a model, we have to understand that it's not our faith model. It's not us having our faith model. Our revelation today is through reason. We believe that there was a Maimon Har Sinai, but not because we absolutely experienced it ourselves, because we have arguments to accept it as true. And therefore it makes it a very, very different event. Okay? So the point is that to apply simple ideas like blind faith to the Akedah situation misses the tension. But the tension is very real, and the tension is a dialectic that is inherent in a lot of Torah thought. Anyways. Okay, so the Pnei Yeshua basically says, what was this whole idea of needing an agreement? It was to take it to the next level. I accept the fact that there will be a punishment beyond the destruction of this world for me for doing this. Okay? Now, what really that's going to lead into is the fact of what you guys were saying before, an acceptance of this reality. In other words, what we're really getting to is that, listen, this is what God, this is the reality. God is authority. This is the reality. These are the rules of the game, right? You know, basically like any other type of science, right? If you jump off a building, you're overtaken by gravity, whether you liked it or not. That's reality. Now, the point is what we're getting into the question of accepting this reality and being and wanting this reality. And that's what we're going to see in the next two Mamarei Chazal. Yeah.
But what did the Jews think before that? Before Sinai?
Okay, so what were the Jews before Sinai?
I mean, obviously they were slaves, but there was something...
What was their political status? What was their halachic status?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyone want to find what's the halachic status of the Jews before Sinai?
Jews?
No, they didn't.
No, individuals.
Not until,
They weren't on Israel.
Not until they got to Sinai.
Well,
they were Ivri.
When were they Jews?
Pardon?
When were they Jews?
When they got the Torah.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Hard question. Might be when Pharaoh designated them that.
No, or it might be already. It's interesting. It might be by the first when they were given the first mitzvah. Okay, somehow they already had that status as Jews. But the point is their status, notwithstanding Yosef's position in terms of the brothers, but the status of the Jews before the Yetzias Mitzrayim Har Sinai event was that they were Noachites. They were bound by the laws of the Bnei Noach, the Shu Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. Okay, there were no
There
fights.
is a concept, or there is midrash to say that they kept Torah laws.
The fact is that Medrash is found by the father. The Medrash is found by the forefathers. The Medrash is found that the Avot kept the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. The Avot kept Torah. It's possibly not the descendants. The only difference might be Milah. And the question existed why the Jews didn't do Milah in Egypt, because Milah might have been an obligation on them as the children of Abraham. Okay, now that is consistent with the view of the Rambam that says that the children of Abraham, including the Bnei Keturah, had to do Milah. But the point is there might have been a specific command on Abraham's lineage to do Milah. So the question is that's where it might be that Moshe Rabbeinu should have done Milah on his son. But the point is, and that raises an interesting question. How did Zipporah converted, Zipporah not converted, how did she convert, or whatever it is. But the truth is that under Noachide law, it goes after the father. So the point is under Noachide law, the children of Moshe, his sons, Gershon and Eliezer, would have to be mulled if it was a Noachide law that the children of Abraham had to be mulled. But this is an interesting question in terms of the obligation. You see this also, Shavuot is coming up. And they say in terms of Shavuos that they ate that. Why do we eat milk? Why do we eat milk products of Shavuos? So one of the answers given is because they just accepted the Torah and they had to keep kosher. And it's a lot harder to prepare meat meals, right, than milk meals. So they had to eat milk meals right away because it was harder to make meat meals. So the point is that argument seems to imply that they weren't obligated in shechita before the Torah was given. So the point is when was their status as Jews?
They may not have been obligated in shechita, but they were permitted meat from Noah.
Yeah, but once they became Jews, they had to be shechted meat.
Okay, fine.
But even if for the Noahide laws, isn't that predicated on monotheistic idea of God?
Yes.
There's one God.
Yes.
So why would anybody follow those laws if they didn't think there was a consequence from...
we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Because the third section tonight is going to be about the difference between the Torah model and the Noahide model.
Okay.
Okay?
Because I guess what I was just thinking is, well, they were already doing this, right? They already had this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep that in mind, because we're going to learn a famous medrash, and what you're saying right now is a key to understanding that medrash. Okay? It's a medrash everyone knows, but they miss the point of the medrash because of what you're about to say. Okay? Okay, because I'm going to skip over the Purim stuff. Okay, what happened at Purim that made a difference. I want to get to the two significant statements I want to deal with today. The first statement I want to deal with is the famous Gemara of Nasa ben Nishma. Okay? Nasa ben Nishma, it's item 3 in the booklet. Okay, for the people on Kosher Tube, we are using the study materials on Kabbalat HaTorah from Nishma. I'm still in the picture, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and anyone wants a copy, they can be in touch with Nishma to get copies, whatever. Okay. So the point is that it's famous Gemara. It says that when the Jewish people, we'll just read the Gemara inside very quickly. Darish Rabbi Simon, okay, so it's item 17, right? In topic 3.0, item 17. B'shah shektimu Yisrael nasa Nishma. The time the Jews placed nasa before Nishma. Okay, nasa is we will do, and Nishma is we will understand. Bo shishim riboy shemalach yesharis, 600,000 ministering angels. L'chol echad v'echad miYisrael came to every Jew, kasher lo shnei ketarim, and tied to them two crowns. Echad keneged nasa, v'echad keneged nishma. One for nasa, one for nishma. Okay? So it seems that the fact that they said Nasa before Nishma gets 2 crowns. It's not just the fact that they said Nasa before Nishma, it's the fact that they said both terms. Kevin Shechata Yisro, but once they sinned with the Egel HaZahav, with the opening, Yardo Me'e Be'esrim Ribra Malaicha Chavala, 1,200,000. We're not going to get into why it was twice as many, punishing angels. Okay, Pirkam came back and took them away. Shenevar be not so b'nei Israel. It's a Edom. Okay, got them stripped of their ornaments. They got from Charkurav. Amar Rabbi Chama bar Chanina. Okay, and Rabbi Chama bar Chanina says. B'chorav Tanu, b'chorav Parko, they came at Chorav, they came to Chorav. Okay, and then he's going to explain why. I just want to find to another statement here. Okay, and then it says that one day God will return it to the Jewish people and so forth. So so if you go down to the second last short line, Amar Rabbi Elazar. At the time that the Jewish people stated Nasa before Nishma, Yatsa Batko, a voice came out from heaven, Va'amra lehem, and said to them, Megillah levenai razeh shemalach yesharet. Who told them this big secret of saying Nasa before Nishma? Okay? In other words, how do they know to get it like that? This is a real secret. This is like the theory of relativity of existence. Who gave it to them? Okay? Okay. So what exactly does that mean? Okay? So he says later on, he says over there that he said beforehand that the Malach Yesharet they know to do before they fully understand. Okay. Now okay. There's another one I want to get to. Okay. So what exactly is this great secret of Nasa and Ishmael? Okay. Now, most people understand Nasa is that the term really could be explained by Nasa alone. God says, "Here's the law." You say we're going to do, and then we'll understand. Well, why? Well, we say we're going to do. The point is that if the value is the fact that we said we were going to do, big deal. The point was they said we will do and understand. They already said we will do in 2 other situations. So the way most people understand it is that we just said we will do before we would understand. The point is they basically said because we said we would do. We're not going to question. We're just going to do. No, that's not the value here. The value here is that we will do and understand, but we'll understand subsequently. Okay? Now, what exactly does that mean? Now, let's look at Rashi number 18. Okay? Muchanim lasos kodem yishmau. Okay? They were willing to do before they heard what it was. Lo kaderech shar avodim, not like other slaves. Sheshomim techila et hadavar. Okay? To hear first what to do and then do it. But notice what Rashi says. Leda im yecholim lekablam aleim ilav. To see if they're able to do it. In other words, he's not talking about accepting to do it, because you're a slave in this situation. Rashi's saying you're a slave. The slave says, okay, the master says to the slave, I want you to go pick up that ton of bricks. Master says, there's a ton of bricks, I can't do it. Okay? So the point here is that's what Rashi's saying. That God is saying, God saying to the Jewish people, I want you to do this. It would have been normal for the Jewish people to say, not is it proper for me to do this, but can I physically do this? Okay, and they said, no, we don't have to. Rashi's saying we don't have to investigate the possibility of actually doing this, because if God is telling us to do this, we trust in Him that we will be able to do this.
And active faith, ultimate faith.
So the point is, the way Rashi's understanding it is, Nasa v'nishma, is we know you're only going to tell us something to do that we're capable of doing. It's the way he understands it. Okay, so let me ask you something. What's the point of checking a capability after you've already said yes? if you're relying upon God to say, I'm capable of doing it, if I sit there and say to you, listen, you trust me, I'm not going to tell you to do something that you're not otherwise going to do, so what's the point of the value of me trying to figure it out afterwards? Okay? I'll do it. Because you tell me I can do it, I have trust in you. So now we're interested in this idea of Nishma being that even though I trust in you, and I'm going to do it because I trust in you, right? I still am going to investigate to see if, for me to understand that I can do it. Okay? Now, the fact is there's a Gemara in okay, let's look at the Kol Ram. Let's look at the Ramosha. Okay, he's going to take this into a little bit of a different realm, if I remember correctly. Okay, 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 okay. So he's going to say it's like this. Okay, he's basically saying that there's a value in understanding. So basically, Moshe says like this. Okay, we're just going to look. Hinei mala nasa lo nagura minasa v'nishma. Nasa seems not worse than nasa v'nishma. B'efshar afili yoter adif. You can even say it's better. Ki rotem lasos below shmiya klal. They're willing to have perfect faith in God. I'll do. Okay? Im kain temua hashevach hagadol shematzinu b'chazal. We have a real problem. What's this great praise of saying nasa v'nishma? I'm going to do it, God. Total trust and faith in you. I'll do it, but then I'll check it out. See, that seems to be a little bit less. It says, no, Ella, and we're going to skip down a few lines. HaTorah nitna pam achas la'olam v'od. Torah is given one time forever and ever. Afterwards, God said, it's not in heaven. It was given over to the wise of the world to figure out each according to their ability. Okay? Even though we find disagreements among the sages, in any event, they're both equally accepted as Torah words. If someone learns Torah according to his understanding, okay, as long as we accept a certain aspect of the tradition, he has accepted to certain parameters. Okay, we have that all coming from God. But there's still a value in the human being learning Torah from his own thought. Okay? Through what he heard from his teachers. Okay, according to their understanding of the tradition. Okay, and this is nasa v'nishma. Okay, okay, okay. Anachnu nasa hadvarim. We will do the actions, v'nilmod osam, and understand them. Al derech shirinu of Rabosenu, pursuant to the Masorah from our tradition, from our teachers, and through our own thought. So what Moshe is basically saying is that even post facto, we said we're going to follow the Torah, there's a value in human beings thinking. Okay? Now, the truth is that there's another Gemara which I didn't mention here. I'm going to skip over the Rav's viewpoint.
Before we go on though, wouldn't the Nishma be a way to further elevate the Nasa? By human understanding of the Naaseh, in the same way we make a bracha, and we pay attention to the
let's move on a little bit.
No problem.
I'm going to skip over to item number 25, okay? Because it's the other Gemara I wanted to say, okay? Duki said to Rabbah, okay, he says, and Rabbah was so engrossed in his learning, he was sitting not under a soft chair, but he was sitting with his hands like this under the chair and so forth, and moving his head, and his hands were starting to rub against the earth, and it was becoming bloody and so forth. Okay? So the Sadduki looked at him and said to him, I'll just read the English here, "Ye rash people, okay, First you give precedence to your mouth over your ears. Okay? And you still persist in your rashness. Okay? You should have listened to what was acceptable within your powers and then accept. Okay? You should not have accepted before listening. Okay? And Rabbi writes back and says basically that he says the integrity of the upright will be our guide. We knew what we were doing. Okay? Now, okay, okay, so the fact is, let me tell you what I'm just, okay, the way I understand what's going on here is like this, okay, and the Mephoshim talked about like this, that there's two forms of Kabbalah. There's Kabbalah out of faith, and there's Kabbalah out of understanding. Kabbalah out of faith, you'll see the commentators, the Skeptorim talk about Miyira, basically being out of awe of God, and the other one of understanding is of Simcha. What we're really being introduced here is something that you're saying. There's a difference between Nasa and Nasa v'nishma. Nasa basically says, I'll do and I have total faith in you. That doesn't ever mean I understand. The key point in Nishma means that we give value to human understanding. So the point is that in the human eventually understanding, there's a value. There's a value, and you see this also in terms of let's say the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim. The Rambam basically says that there's certain mitzvot you'll never understand. He basically says there's two types of mitzvot. Mitzvot we understand, mitzvot we don't understand. The chukim. Right? And basically we say we'll never understand those mitzvot. The most classic example being Parah Aduma. Shlomo Melech tried to investigate the Parah Aduma, couldn't understand it. So we learn out from there that we can't really understand it all.
What's Parah Aduma?
The red heifer. The laws of the red heifer. So the question emerges, if that's true, so what's the point of investigating? Yet the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, after he basically says a certain mitzvah we don't understand, we still have to investigate their understanding. And throughout all of Jewish thought, they're always working on the red heifer. They're always working on trying to understand every mitzvah. But they're beyond our understanding. Fact is that if you just said Nasa, we do because we trust in God. Nasa v'nishma says we're doing it. The reason we're doing it right off the bat is because we absolutely trust in you. And we trust in you that you're not going to tell us something that's good for us. And we trust in you that you're going to tell us something that we can do. That's going to be within our limits. We're going to be able to do it. But you know something? That won't be enough. It won't be enough for what your goal is for us. Because your goal is for us to have understanding. And the truth is, I taught you about Ramosha, but Ramosha especially, you find very cases in Ramosha where he points out that that's the very way that God gave the Torah. God gave the Torah in such a way that He wanted human beings involved. He wanted people to think. And therefore, even though by bringing in human involvement you'll have the possibility of disagreements, it's better to have that reality than everything being so clearly defined that people didn't think anymore.
Then we're only like Malachim, and we have one role, and we fulfill it, and that's it.
Exactly. The point is that we are supposed to be thinking beings. And therefore the question arises, okay, if you have God saying do, and you just say nasa, that shows faith in God. But the point is that we also have an obligation to try and understand God. And that's where we come down to nasa v'nishma. Nishma is a further commitment to understand. Okay, so basically Nasa v'nishma was an agreement to say we will do, obviously, and the example given is Abed, which is also the example of Melech. King says jump, of course we're going to jump. But the point is that's not enough. If you only do it because you're a robot, you only do it under the authority of the king, that won't be enough, because you want to understand. Now it takes us to the next section.
I just want to make the clarification that there are two psukim that say both. There's one that says Kol Asher Diber Hashem Naseh.
There's actually three. There's actually three.
There's a third one later on.
There's two psukim that say Nasa, and there's Tulane. Tulane. Because you really know your psukim.
Yes.
A lot of times we I'm telling you, it's like, you know, the truth is I used to lane years ago. I used to lane, but it's one of, you know, there's a famous story. The Bach, in learning, you always refer people by their titles of commentary. Israel's real serious name. Bach is a major commentary on the Torah. One of the top guys of the Jewish, you know, top people. The Bach, okay, he's major, one of the big guys in Jewish legal history. He had a daughter, and he also had a student. His number one student, again, was the Taz, the Torah Zahav. Okay, again, I know them by the name of the book. The Bach was a major commentator in Torah. The Torah Zahav is a major commentator in Shulchan Aruch. So he was learning with the Taz, and they had this whole big disagreement about. They had something about a pasuk and so forth and so forth. And the Bach's daughter came by and sort of said, "Yeah, that pasuk is in this and this and this, and this pasuk here and so forth and so forth." She knew Tanakh like the back of her hand.
Well,
So I forget. Right. So afterwards, I forget what they were talking about. But the Taz was so impressed. Somehow I think her name was somehow connected to Levana or whatever. And Taz was so impressed, he sort of looked at Bach, his Rebbe, and said, "No, when do we mekadosh Levana?" like. And eventually they got married. But the point is that one of the things that always is an aspect of any teacher, of someone like especially, you know, is that someone who, you know, if you have a person who's a balkaire in the audience, they are going to be on top of you about psukim, and you have to accept the fact that you don't know what you're talking. You're right. There's actually 2 times they said Nasa, and 1 time they said Nasa v'nishma. But Ramosha is right that the Nasa v'nishma is the one that's praised, right? But the point is, there's a value in Nasa, and then there's a value of Nasa v'nishma. Okay, so now we've gotten to this point where the Jewish people said we will do, and because we have faith in God, we will work to try and understand. It's not enough to just say we're going to do and have faith in God. We have to also work to understand. Now that's going to be major in terms of understanding also the first case. Okay? Okay, because we're already in a process now. The first case said Jews were given the Torah, they were forced. The process wasn't concluded till Purim. Now we're introduced to the idea that their agreement of Nasa v'nishma was an agreement to the process. Okay? Now we're going to try and further clarify this process. Next comes a famous story. And Beth, I want you to be the one who asks the question that makes this story not understandable. Okay? Okay.
I'm going to try.
Why is this night different than any other night?
Okay? Beth, you've already asked the question.
Okay.
Okay? Just gotta find the context.
Right.
Okay. 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 That's the verse. Okay. When God revealed Himself to give the Torah to the Jewish people, Lo al Yisrael bilvad hu nigla. He did not just reveal Himself to the Jewish people. Elo al kol ha'umas, okay, but to all the nations of the world. Went to all the nations. B'tchila chalach etzel b'nei Esav. He went to the children of Esav. Amar lahem, came to them. Makabel matem et Torah. Says to them, do you want to accept the Torah? Amar lo, makasuv ba. They said, what's in it?
Oh wait, I have the question.
Okay, wait a sec. Amar lahem lo tirtzach. It says, don't commit murder. Amar lefanav. They said to him, Rabbeinu Shalom, God, kol hatzasa shalosa avihem rotzeechu. The very being of our forefather was to be a murderer. Right? Shenever b'yadai v'dei Esav. His hands are the hands of Esav. That's what he is. Okay? Okay? And that's why you told that our forefather will live by the sword. So he says, hey man, that's not who we are. What are you telling us? That's not who we are. Got the question?
Didn't they follow the Noahide law?
Well, Tirtzach is also prohibited under the Noahide code.
Yep.
So what's God says? It says, don't commit murder. Hey, they're already bound by not committing murder. They don't have a choice in that. So what's going on over here? Now comes in that, and by the way, that's going to be the problem with the next two cases. Halachol Eitzu B'nei Ammon and Moab. He went down to Ammon and Moab. V'amar lehem, Kabbalat Mes HaTorah, says he accepted the Torah. Amar lo, ma kasuv ba. He said, okay, what's in it? Amar lehem, lo sinaf, not to commit adultery, not to be promiscuous. Amar lo, afanav, what are you talking about, God? Rabbeinu Shalom, God. Kol atzata shel erva lehemi. Our very being is promiscuity. We're born out of incest. That's who we are.
And guess what?
Telling the French not to be promiscuous. What are you talking about here? Telling the Italians not to be murderers. Excuse me, I'm not being politically correct. Okay.
Whoa.
Okay. Now he says, okay. Halach. Okay. Halach u'matzah b'nei Yishmael. Sorry, I just... okay. This is kosher Jew. Halach u'matzah b'nei Yishmael. Then he went and found b'nei Yishmael. Amar lehem, Kabbalat Mes HaTorah. Says, do you want to accept the Torah? Okay. Amar lo, ma kasuv ba. What's in it? Okay. Amar lehem, lo signav. Don't steal. Amar lo, avadav Rabbeinu Shalom. God. Our forefathers, that's what he's about. What do you mean don't commit murder, don't be a thief? That's what we're about. Okay? Then he goes to the Jewish people. The Jewish people say Nasa v'nishma. Now, there's two aspects of this medrash. One is the fact that the non-Jews ask first what's in it. And the second is that they were given answers, but everything that they were told was something they were bound by already.
So they should have said, Osiv ve'yishma.
What?
They should have said, so we're already doing it, now we're understanding.
No, the fact of the matter is they didn't do that. That's the next Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The next Gemara in Avodah Zarah basically challenges why didn't God raise a mountain over their head? To get them to say yes. Right? So the Gemara says, well, the Jews already were sort of following it, but the non-Jews, they didn't even do it when they were previously commanded. So they were already not doing it, so they weren't already not doing it. But the point over here, they didn't sit there and say, what's in it? Well, we don't follow that anyways. They said, that's not who we are. So that becomes a real interesting issue, in the sense that, and this is asked by a lot of commentaries. A lot of people tell that story about how God went around to all the nations and they said no, and Jews said Nasa v'nishma. What they don't recognize is that the law that God told them, the non-Jews were already bound by. And the 2 points is, first of all, they asked. The question is, why did they ask at this point in time? Okay, and we've already seen from Nasa v'nishma that there was already issues of how the Jews asked. We already saw that Saduki challenged Shan's Rabbah and said, why didn't you ask? Okay? And the second thing is that they were already told things that they were bound by. So, yeah.
So, first of all, how did the other nations know that they were bound by Noahide laws? And if Hashem is really the one who presented this to them in both cases, then did the other nations just see Hashem as one of their other pagan gods and to be dismissed?
Okay.
Read the source on that. And as a third question, if they knew they were bound by those Noahide laws, and they were the Erev Rav under the mountain, they chose not to.
Okay. But again, that's not so simple. They chose not to, because the fact is that there's
well, they said this is not what we're about.
But the Erev Rav. But this wasn't the Erev Rav.
No, I understand it's not the Erev Rav, but I'm saying these are people bound by the Noahide laws, and they're saying, no, we don't do that.
No, that didn't say we don't do that. We don't accept it. Okay. Let's
fine.
Let's
we don't
get.
accept it.
Let's deal with a interest. Let's deal with this in a thing. Midrashim present a problem. Any medrash presents a problem. Is it really what happened historically? And you have a challenge. How did God go around to all the nations? Was there a convention of all the nations at that point in time? There's midrashim that said all the nations heard Sinai, all nations heard Yom Suf. Okay, there is midrashim that said that all the seas in the world parted at Yom Suf. Okay, the point is that there's a real challenge in terms of understanding what history was like, and the fact is that in accepting the Torah's view of history, you have to accept the fact that you're talking about a history that did not work with our present, understanding of the laws of reality. Okay, we don't see open miracles. We don't see the magic of turning blood into water. Okay, notwithstanding Penn and Teller. But the fact is that there is a reality that the Torah is working within, and we have to understand that reality is one that we don't fully understand. However, at the same point in time, the Midrash is saying something we don't know what historically actually happened, but it's giving over an idea. That the non-Jews were bound to Noahide code is an interesting issue of how they knew it. First of all, they knew it from Noah. Noah got told. So if everyone comes to Noah, how do they know it? How the people forgot about Noah is an interesting question. By the time Avraham Avinu comes around, he knew nothing about God. Okay, that was like 10 generations after Noah. So how did the people stop believing in God? And the Rambam,
so they were just carrying out.
No, they weren't following the Noahide law. But the first thing they had to do is reject the fact that God is as giving the law. So how did they stop believing in God? I mean, one of the classic issues that exists.
There's still yeshiva of Shem and Ephraim.
There still was. There were still people who were monotheists. There were. But the fact is, it's an interesting question. History, secular history, tries to explain how monotheism developed. Right? Accepting idolatry first, and then developed monotheism. But Judaism has to explain how polytheism developed. Noah knew there was one God. Okay, Shem, Ham, Yafet knew there was one God. They went through the Mabul, right? So how is it that somehow they started developing a acceptance of idolatry, of polytheism? So that becomes an issue in terms of a question. The Rambam has his theory. In the Hilchos Avodah Zarah, he basically says that polytheism developed because there was an argument that God gave powers over to the celestial bodies, and that we should start showing honor to the celestial bodies the same way you show honor to any officer of the king. So if there's the Governor General is to be treated with respect because he's the representative of the king. So therefore, the moon, as representative of the king, should be treated with respect. Says that's the way it started, and then it started developing into greater polytheism, so on and so forth. How that worked, I don't know. But the point is that there are arguments how they knew about the Noahide code, and they knew it from the fact that they were told certain things. Hammurabi. There's a whole argument how close Hammurabi is to Torah, or how close Hammurabi is to Noahide code. Well, what came first? So as people say, so seculars like to say, well, Hammurabi preceded the Torah and influenced the Torah. We say it the other way around, that there was Noahide laws beforehand, and Hammurabi basically wrote down a code based upon it. But the fact is that the dynamics of how it separated from God is an interesting issue. How that worked over history is a question. But the point is that the Medrash is basically talking within an idea that given there's a concept of following the Noahide laws, there was a concept of why didn't he ask the other, or what was the issue with the other nations, or more significantly from the Medrash, what made the Jews stand out? That's really the issue here. Okay? How God spoke to the other nations or not, the point is the other nations didn't, notwithstanding they didn't follow it from the Noahide code, but when they were offered the question, they asked what was in it, and they rejected it based upon what's in it. God says, hey, this is what's in it. He's saying, well, no, God, I don't think so. What's going on over here? So the fact is there's two approaches that I found in answer to this question. One is from this long article here called the Shirei Dat. Shirei Dat was one of the first Rosh Yeshivas of the Telzer Yeshiva in Lithuania. He basically presents that there are two models for following God's commands. One model is Melech HaMetzuva Al Ha'am. It's the political model of authority. God's king, he orders, you follow it. The second one is Rofe HaMetzava Al Hachola, the doctor who commands the patient. Okay? Doctor does not have authority, okay, to command the patient, notwithstanding what some doctors may believe or think, and I'm not talking about any present company, but the fact is, okay, no comment whatsoever. No.
I can tell them what to do, and they can say no.
Right. But the fact is the concept of Rofa Masava Al-Chola is good, and there's a consequence. You'll be sick. Right? So there's one viewpoint that says the Noachide code is based upon Melech HaMetzuva Al Ha'am, God giving a command to his people. There's no choice. There's another model that says it's Rofa Masava Al Hachola. It's the doctor ordering his patient. And the doctor can say, and the patient can say, no, I don't want to do it. Okay? So basically, the Shirei Das presents two models for why we listen to God. One is the authority of the king, and the other one is the intellectual authority of the doctor. His argument is the Shem Mitzvah B'nai Noach is based upon the model of Rofa Mitzvah Al-Chola, of a doctor ordering a patient, and therefore the patient can say, I'll no, and I'll accept the consequences. But he says the concept of Torah is Melech Mitzvah Al-Am, that it's a king commanding the nation. Rav Moshe Feinstein, and I happen to be more on the side of Rav Moshe, basically in Kol Ram, and this is item number 32, doesn't necessarily disagree with Rofa Mitzvah Al-Chola in terms of, not talking about the 7 Noachide laws, but he basically he says no. He says that the Noachide code is based upon Melech HaMetzuva Al Ha'am. God's authority as king commands the Noachides to follow the Noachide code. And that's why Noachides have to follow the code. It's God's world. It's God's law. Now the truth is that can also fit into God is reality. You can also apply it to the reality of the Noachides. It's both realities that started off our discussion back to the Koifleim Harkagiyas. There's two models that God can say in terms of here it is. One, I'm in charge, here are the rules, or this is reality, this is the way it is, accept the consequences. Which is fine. That basically is the Noachide system. And I have a lot of reasons for arguing that, but that basically is, in my understanding, the Noachide rule. That the Noachide code was under, I'm God, here are the rules. So when when God goes to the other nations and says, if I'm speaking as God and you're Noachides, I'm speaking as a political authority of king, I say don't murder. I don't care how difficult it is for you. I don't care how much is against your personality. This is the reality. Don't murder. I'm king. That's it. And that's the Noachides. Yeah.
No, sorry.
No, okay. Ben?
Okay, so, but authority comes with the ability to wield power.
Yes.
So if power isn't felt as a direct link to Hashem in this world, then what's the battle? Why should they believe Hashem?
Okay, so let's assume that there was power given. The point is that at this point in time, at Egypt, it was clear that God basically indicated his power.
Yeah, but what about the other nations?
Well, that's where you get the idea that all the nations knew what happened in Egypt. Now, the point is that has verification from the statement of Rachav in the Sefer Yoshua, when the spies come to Rachav is the what?
Even before with Yitro.
Yeah, Yitro also heard about everything that happened. But the fact is that Yitro already says, I heard everything that happened. But by Rachav, and this is what makes the whole story with Yitro, with Yericho, very fascinating. When the spies come to Yericho and Rachav hides them, he basically says, listen, we know everything that happened for the last 40 years. We knew how you beat the crap out of Egypt. Right? We know how you were supported in the desert for 40 years, and we understand God's on your side. So, and that's why Rachav says, listen, when you guys do take over the city, please remember me. Right? Now, Rachav is considered to be a tzedekis at this point in time. Okay? And Rachav eventually is Megayer, or converts, and she becomes Yeshua's wife. So you're talking about a tzedekis. But it seems to me that Rachav is just common sense. Hey, we know what happened in Egypt. We know what happened in the desert. I got the message about God, but somehow that was so exceptional at the time, you're wondering what everyone else was thinking. But the point is God's reality was pretty well known.
Yeah, but I'm talking about before Sinai.
Yeah, that was from Egypt. From Egypt, God.
I mean, even before Hashem.
Well, that's where Pharaoh does not know. When Moshe comes to Pharaoh and Pharaoh says, "Who's this God who's telling me what to do?" Basically, that's exactly what Pharaoh says.
So you mean, okay, sorry, I must have misunderstood. I thought that you were saying that the whole world was obligated to the Noahide laws.
Yes. The truth is that the world was obligated to the Noahide laws. That's a legal concept within.
Obligated through personal knowledge passed down father to son,
right.
From Adam until Noah, and then from Noah until everybody else.
Right.
Okay.
And there is no overt miracle until Egypt.
Okay.
There may have been other indications, and I mean, the fact of the matter is that there seems to be some knowledge of God. I mean, when Avram goes before Pharaoh, I mean, they had this idea like, whatever we do, don't take the wife. We'll kill the husband, don't take the wife. And then Pharaoh gets in a lot of trouble, and he says to Avram, like, hey, why didn't you tell me who you were? So there seems to be some type of, you don't talk on Superman's cape idea. So the point is how this permeated in the world, I don't know. But the point is that at the time of Sinai, there seems to be this idea. But we're talking in legal theory that the nations of the world knew not to murder, that they didn't have an option of murdering, because it was the law that they could not murder under the rule of the political authority figure. God is king. And there was also this other argument that this is reality. You can't have law and order in the world unless you have some type of rules. Okay, so the point is that there seems to be this reality as well. The nations, though, when God said, "Do you want to accept it?" what were they asking then? So at this point in time, they were saying, "Listen, you're not telling us, you're not ordering us to accept it. You want us to accept this reality, right? You want us to accept this reality, okay? And the point in time, what are the rules of the reality that you want us to accept, okay? Which seems to make sense." And this really raises the question of Nasa and Ishma. The point is that at this point in time, hey, you don't want me just to do it because I'm being told. You want me to try and you want me to accept it. The point is that it's very interesting what their challenge is. The challenge is not simply I don't like it. The challenge is psychologically. It's not in line with who we are. We have to be a certain type of person. Our being is a certain type of person. What you are telling us to do is contrary to our being. What would be proper for us to do is in line with our being. Yeah, there may be impositions from law, says, listen, I can't do what I want to do, right? There might be impositions from reality. There's consequences of what if I try to be me. But the point is that they're saying is that if you want us to accept this reality, want us to accept these rules, it's got to be everything that who we are. don't murder.
They've chosen to disregard. It's become a part of their being.
But no, the fact is they didn't just say it's disregarding. It's who they were psychologically. Now the truth of the matter is we lose sight of the fact.
It might be not psychologically, but deterministically.
Well,
this is our environment. This is the way.
But they go back. No, they go right back to their very beginning.
This is the way that we were raised. This is what we're in.
I think it goes right back to their. I think they go back to the very being. Okay, Esav wasn't raised that way. Esav is saying, that's who I am. Now the truth is, this gets back to a very important statement from the Gemara that if you're born, and we've talked about this before, if you're born under the sign of Mars, which means you are bloodthirsty, there's three ways you can bring that to fruition. Okay, you can be a murderer, which is a rasha. You can be a shoichet, which is someone who kills animals, and therefore you'll get rid of your desire to kill by shechting the animals, right? And that's sort of like Beinoni. Or you can actually do a mitzvah. And the Gemara says the example is being moil, okay, where you draw blood by doing a mitzvah.
How do you become vegetarian?
That's because you don't have the drive. The point is that within Judaism there's a belief that every drive that we have has a proper way of fulfilling it.
This is Freud's sublimation.
Well, it's more than sublimation.
Yeah.
It's more than sublimation. Sublimation basically says there's a way to do that drive that won't be a problem.
Right.
This is basically saying that the drive's real desire is this. This is what you really want. Okay?
It's a way to fit into society so that society can work.
But no, it's more than that. It's that this is what God really wants you to be.
Okay.
Okay, you have this drive because this is what you really should be. Okay, now the point is that this is in line over there. So when God says don't commit murder, they're sitting there saying that's not who we are, so we can't do it. So therefore, the question now emerges: what did the Jews do? Now on the surface, it seems what they did was so contrary to this model. Hey, God is king. We're going to listen to you because we're good. We're law-abiding citizens. Reality, we got the reality.
Works for us.
Okay, but the fact is that what was the issue with Nasa and Nishma? And the point here is the Jews understood something that the non-Jews did not understand. What is it that the Jews understood that non-Jews didn't understand by Nasa and Nishma? To say I'm not going to do it is stupid. Why is it stupid? Because A, God the King is telling me to do it. It's contrary to accepting Him in His role as King. It's reality. God is saying doing it. It must be in line with reality to do it. Okay? But more than that. If God is telling me to do it, it must be something that is good for me. Because God is a Tova Meitiv. The problem is that I may not understand why it's good for me. That's the problem. The problem is, I know this has got to be the right thing to do, but the fact is, I don't know it's the right thing to do. Now, the non-Jews basically said, in not knowing that it's the right thing to do, I can't accept it. Because I'm not acting with my mind. I'm not fulfilling my perception of will.
Well, that's Reformed theology.
Okay, exactly. So therefore, what does that lead to? The fact is, when the Jews said Nasa and Nishma, they understood that there may be a process in attempting to understand why this is the right thing for me, and that it may take my involvement, and it may be something that I may not even understand in the end. So when they said Nasa and Nishma, basically what they were saying is, I will do it based upon my faith in God, that He's telling me the right thing for me, and that it is in line with who I really am. But I also would do Nishma to understand that it really is who I am. And that will take a process that I can only have through Torah. And that's really the remarkable thing about this. Torah is not just a matter of do's and don'ts. Torah is the study of Torah. The only way to understand how Torah can make you understand the value of Torah is through the study of Torah. And that's really what the Jews said. we're going to do this, right? Because we understand king, reality, and so forth. We're going to do it because we have trust in you that we're going to do it. We understand that there's still a lack because it's still lacking our total free will acceptance of it. There's still koifelim hartigigas. We still understand that we're being pushed to do it because of the king and the reality aspect and the reality of your God. But the point is that the only way we will understand how we can do this, why it is the reflection of who we are, is by accepting Torah and studying it. And that's what Nishma is basically understood. It's understood to be the acceptance of the study of Torah, of investigating Torah, so that we can understand how Torah is a true reflection of who we are. And that's really what Nasa V'Nishma was. And that was the unique secret that the Jewish people figured out at Sinai.
So I want to understand a little bit about Torah.
Yes.
Specifically about Rachav. Was she an example of Nishma V'Naaseh?
Rachav, I don't know if she fully understood why this was beneficial to her to be this, but she understood the reality of the situation, that the Jewish people accepted it and so forth and so forth, and that she was in a situation where God's giving this land over to the Jewish people and gave us an ultimatum. When Yeshua gave the non-Jews an ultimatum, it said, listen, you have three choices: get out, follow the Noahide laws, or we're going to destroy you. So Rachav basically said, listen, I'm here, I'd like to leave, I was afraid for my life, it was over, but remember that I was nice to you, and then I'm with you guys. And therefore she converted to become Jewish. Okay. And by the way, it might be a conversion. That's what conversion is. There's a lot of indication in Kabbalat, the Kabbalat mitzvahs is not Nishma. A lot of people make the mistake by conversion. People think there has to be an extensive course before conversion. The truth of the matter is, if you actually look at the classic sources, it doesn't say you teach all the mitzvot before conversion. You mention a few mitzvot. What you're looking for the convert to do is basically say, again, Nasa V'Nishma, I accept this. Okay? And the idea of accepting it, authority of God, and so forth and so forth, the idea of accepting it is understand that this is really what is best for you. This is who you are. Okay?
Another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it spelled like the word wide?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's got to be a connection there.
Maybe.
Or something.
Yes, I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is.
I mean, it says the land is rechavat yadayim.
Yeah, right.
Wide, opening its hands wide.
I mean, she's a very interesting person in history. Generally, there's some question. The term that's used to describe Rachav is a zonah. Okay, and zonah can be translated two ways. One is as prostitute, and one is as what do you call it?
Goes off the
No. That's zonah is like from mazon, the innkeeper.
Yeah.
So was she just an innkeeper? Or was she a prostitute? And she's often referred to, like, there's this whole mythology of the friendly prostitute or whatever, like in the movies, what's the
Oh, you mean like Pretty Woman? Or?
Yeah, like, but more like she's like a real nice person who's sort of like trying to take care. Well, no, who's trying to take care of everyone's needs, and but the point is that Rachav, and this raises an interesting. But the only reason I point this out is because Rachav is then understood to be a tzedekis, right, and marries Yeshua. So the point is that this is pointed out that Rachav's previous past as if she was a zonah in its more traditional use of the word as a prostitute, it did not prevent Yeshua from marrying her. Okay, so that's important in terms of understanding how we look at tshuva and we look at the movement in that regard.